Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we have something of an obscure and deliciously mysterious topic, because I would like to explore one of, if not the greatest lurking legend of Hunter x Hunter, a man by the name of Don Freecss. No, not Gon Freecss, not Jing Freecss, but Don Freecss, which might be a very new and strange name to you if you're an anime-only fan of Hunter x Hunter, because Don does not appear in the events it covered. In fact, his existence only becomes known to us in the manga shortly after the anime's conclusion, and actually I should probably say right here and now that Don has not made a visual appearance in general. At this point, he has only ever been mentioned, so I do apologize in advance for the lack of, visual material relating to Don Freecss over the course of this video, but at the same time, the fact that we haven't seen this guy only makes him that much more mysterious and intriguing, especially because we know quite a surprising amount about him. The most stunning information of which is that yes, Don Freecss was a subscriber to the New World Review, which granted him regular Hunter x Hunter content uploaded straight into his YouTube feed. So if you wanted to become like this man, myth, and legend all rolled into one, then there is no better place to start than hitting this beautiful crimson red button. But in all seriousness, Don's existence is first made known to us in chapter 344 by Jing. Although some context for what's happening here, because it's important, especially if you're an anime only watcher, after the events of the anime conclude, we pretty much immediately shift focus to traveling to the Dark Continent with a wide variety of individual groups and people, each gunning for this location for varying reasons, most of which are still unknown to us at this stage. And Jing specifically has chosen to infiltrate a team of temp hunters led by a man named Beyond. And as such, Jing begins informing the team of all sorts of treasures and horrors that they can expect to find on the Dark Continent. But how does Jing know all of this information, you ask? I mean, we do know for a fact that he's never been to the Dark Continent himself. Well, he happens to have read a book authored by someone who has been to the Dark Continent, known as Journey to the New World. And the author of this book, as you may very well have guessed by now, would be one Don Freecss. Quite the twist out of nowhere, if I do say so myself, dropping in that good old Freecss name. But this story still has yet to become truly strange, because Journey to the New World does not exist as a single tome, and instead is divided into two parts, being the East and West editions respectively. And from here I'm going to defer to the words of Jing Freecss to best explain the existence of these books. There are idiots in any era. In fact, there was one guy who tried to explore the entire Mobius shoreline by himself 300 years ago. He even wrote a book about it, Journey to the New World, East and West editions. But only the East has been found, with no sign of the West. And as for why this is, there are three possible reasons I can think of. One is that it simply hasn't been found yet. Another is that the author's goal was too ambitious and he never wrote it. And the third is that he's still writing as we speak. And that book's author is Don Freecss. And just like that, we have created one of the most fascinating characters to have ever existed in this brilliant series. Although I do think we need to take a moment to explain some things here, because there may be certain features that don't quite add up initially, such as the idea that Don, if he is indeed alive, would be well over 300 years old at this point, which can be quite an alarming thought because aging in Hunter x Hunter more or less reflects that of reality, with the exception of very well-versed Nen users. Masters of this art form can conserve and even apply their aura directly to slow the aging process or to preserve the body for as long as possible, but even that has its limits. A good example of which would be Isaac Netero. While we have never discovered his exact age, Netero is at least 110 years old, and from that it can also be inferred that his contemporaries such as Linnea Derv and Mahal Zoldyck would share a similar age range. And whilst they could far surpass that 110 years, Netero at the very least should not even come close to reaching 300. And we know this because it has been stated that Netero was 50 years old when he completed the whole punching ritual in less than an hour, and it has also been said that he descended from the mountains roughly 60 years before his death. So I suppose Netero could have remained in the mountains for close to, 200 years, but it is highly unlikely. And as such, this would make Don Freecss theoretically far and away the oldest known character in Hunter x Hunter, which is very, very possible because Don does have one key advantage that Netero would not have when it comes to aging, and that is being a resident of the Dark Continent, because Don would have had access to a substance known as nitro rice, which is said to be the ultimate secret to longevity. And in fact, a whole expedition to the Dark Continent was conducted in search of this substance by the Federation of Ochima, an unsuccessful expedition that is, that fell prey to the calamity of Hellbell. But the very existence of nitro rice demonstrates the possibility of effective immortality. But the thing is, it doesn't even need to be nitro rice specifically. That's just what we know of currently. The Dark Continent is full of substances that can grant humanity powers and benefits far beyond the wildest imagination of what is available in the human realm. And what I also find quite interesting is the possibility that Don Freecss actually predates the entire Hunter Association. Association, because their current exam year would be 289, making them very, very old, but not quite as old as the life mission of Don Freecss. But Don being over 300 years old is, oddly enough, quite possibly the easiest thing to accept about this man. A much more difficult thought is how one man has survived the Dark Continent for this long, or indeed at all. And to demonstrate the difficulty of this endeavor, we need look no further than, once again, Isaac Netero, whose brief flashback gives us the only true glimpse of this landmass that we've been privy to at this point. And even he was completely overwhelmed by the power of this continent, having stated that the only possible victory that could be obtained here was survival itself. And whilst Netero and Don have quite clearly achieved that victory, one more so than the other, this is not true of the other known expeditions, as other voyages have universally resulted in utter failure and mass casualties. And I really don't think that the power of this continent can be overstated. To take a well-known example, the Chimera ants were native to the Dark Continent, and exposing them to the cozy realm of humanity almost resulted in the extinction of mankind within a mere couple of months. Meanwhile, it has also been confirmed that Nanika is a creature from the Dark Continent as well, who is quite literally the most powerful character within the entire series, capable of essentially anything so long as it is in wish form. Plus, we do have the 5 calamities, one of which may be Nanika actually, but look, whether it be flora or fauna, each and every living thing on the Dark Continent seems to be capable of wiping out humanity, let alone a single human exploring its home territory. And make no mistake, these beings also possess a great threat to Nen users, as well as the general public, obviously. And even though you could argue that the Chimera ants only became an apocalyptic level threat because they discovered Nen, in the end, Meruem's colony was only designated as a Class B threat, and just let that sink in for a moment. Meruem and his entire colony did not even warrant the highest threat ranking. So there's some pretty damn serious stuff out there, all of which Don Freecss, to have even completed the first half of his book, would have needed to either combat or avoid. And I think it would be pretty foolish to assume that he did not use Nen to do so. However, another very interesting thing about Don is that he would predate the Shingen-Ryu School of Kung Fu by almost 250 years, which is the primary institution that developed the general practices of Nen as we know it. And while it's obviously possible to become a Nen master through other avenues, it's interesting to think about the fact that Don Freecss may be invoking a very old and perhaps even lost methodology of wielding aura. And the other option is, of course, that Don may be an unconscious Nen user, one of the very rare people who are able to activate and wield their aura without realizing what they're doing, which is usually a pretty startlingly powerful use of Nen. Think Komugi, who was able to invoke her aura for the purpose of playing Gungi and never lost once to the impossible genius of Meruem. If anything, this kind of aura usage is usually far more potent than consciously sculpted Nen abilities, and something like that could very much explain Don's highly improbable survival. And just a quick note on Don's mission here. I often see the misconception that he set out to explore the entirety of the Dark Continent, which I would say would be next to impossible because it's simply too big. It would probably take tens of thousands of years to do so, probably more. So Don, weirdly enough, has a more abridged goal of sorts, being that he made it his mission to travel around the shoreline of Lake Mobius. Lake Mobius being the giant stretch of water in the middle, in which the human realm actually resides. So that's right, the entirety of the human world in Hunt x Hunter is actually more like a tiny speck of island thing in this truly massive lake, nestled inside of an even more truly massive continent. And now something else I should address is that while Jing has obviously read the East edition of Journey to the New World, this does not appear to be common knowledge amongst the Hunter Association. And this is probably because this manuscript was actually widely considered to be a work of fiction up until recent times anyway. And currently the East edition is housed in a very highly secure facility by the V6, which are an alliance of 6 of the human world's most vast and powerful countries. And whilst copies of this book do exist, they are not widespread and are mostly given to agents of the V6 who are charged with handling Dark Continent related activities. Such poor unfortunate people they are. And the one other thing we haven't discussed up until this point would be the name of Freecss, which would obviously heavily imply that Don is related to both Gon and Jing. And I mean, look, it's technically unconfirmed, but I would be pretty beyond shocked if this was not the case. And I think it's currently slotting in quite nicely with the general themes of Hunter x Hunter. And what I mean by that is that for the most part of the series, we follow Gon around the realm of humanity in search of his legendary father Jing. And now that that mission is wrapped up, we're taking it a step further by following Jing around the New World in search of a long-lost relative in Don. It's almost too perfect, and in some kind of glorious fantasy world where Hunter x Hunter was published regularly, oh, just imagine that. Maybe even one day we could discover that Gon was simply a Freecss in search of yet another legendary Freecss, this time thousands of years old, and just keep this cycle going. Although another nice idea does exist, because most of this video does assume that Don is alive, because that would be the most tantalizing thought to grasp onto. However, that may be far from the case. And there's also the potential that this entire story is being set up for Jing to discover Don, or what remains remains of Don, and then perhaps finish his relative's work by concluding the West edition of Journey to the New World. But whatever the case, the very idea that Don Freecss does, or at least did, exist opens up a whole new world of Hunter x Hunter alongside the Dark Continent itself. And Don is a very important anchor in this entire concept, because it's one thing to unveil this mysterious landmass with the promise of horrors and discovery, but what makes this idea infinitely more interesting is the fact that there is at least one person who has, against all odds, managed to either conquer or integrate into that ecosystem, a feat that not even the great Isaac Netero was capable of. And so as it is, Don Freecss may very well represent a new pinnacle of humanity in terms of power, intelligence, and sheer will to survive and thrive. And regardless of whether he is still with us or not, he is an undeniably legendary figure of Hunter x Hunter. But what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Hunter x Hunter content, then please do feel free to check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for regular Hunter x Hunter glory delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.